finding the perfect gimbal is always a compromise between quality and weight. Essentially, you want to keep your rig as light as it can possibly be, but also have the motor strength to handle the camera that you're looking to put on it. And over the past year or so, I've been looking for the holy grail of gimbals, something that's strong enough to take an APS-C size camera and my Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens, but also light enough that it could just float away if I let go of it. Introducing the Moza Aircross S. So for the past year, I've been using this setup. This is the Moza Aircross 3, which I reviewed on this channel probably about a year ago. And I've really grown to love this gimbal. It can take heavier cameras like my Sony FX30 and the Tamron 28-75mm lens with no problem whatsoever. It's fairly compact, which means I can chuck it into my camera bag really easily, and it has never let me down. But there are a couple of shortcomings with this gimbal. Firstly, the locks that lock the axes in place sometimes just accidentally click on and lock during filming. And secondly, even though it's a small gimbal compared to something like the Ronin RS3, it's still quite heavy. And when you're holding something for 8 or 10 hours a day, you really want it to be light. And it doesn't get much lighter than this. Well, I tell a lie. Over the past couple of months, a number of companies have brought out really small gimbals that they say can take an APS-C size camera. And they've sent me review units to take a look at. And I have to say, I've not been impressed by any of them. Now, Moza are marketing this as a 3-in-1 gimbal. They say that you can have a camera on it, you can put a phone in portrait mode on the top, and you can even attach an action camera underneath. And I can see why this might be appealing to some people, but for me, they've missed a trick. This is the first pocket-sized gimbal that can actually handle an APS-C size camera. And it comes with most of the bells and whistles that its older brother gets. You get the locking axes, which are a game changer when you're trying to balance your gimbal. You get app control, and you get a record button on the front, so you can start and stop recording directly from the gimbal without having to reach over and press the record button. It seems as though every company out there are trying to make a gimbal as solid and compact as this one, but Moza have kind of done it by accident in the pursuit of something else. So let's just take a look at the design of this gimbal. First things first, the joystick on the left hand side. Now this is actually a really nice placement. Usually the joystick is somewhere around this area on a gimbal, like it is on the Moza Aircross 3. But because this gimbal's so compact, that's where your thumb naturally rests, so you can control this gimbal really easily with just a little movement of your thumb. Next to that, we've got the menu button and this very bright and clear display. On the left hand side, we've got the power button, which also puts the gimbal to sleep with just a single press, and the USB-C port. And on the front, we've got this trigger, which puts it into selfie mode with a triple click, and puts it back into the original position with a double click. And then if we hold the trigger, the camera stays level as we're moving the gimbal about. Same as on the Aircross 3. Also on the front, we've got the record button, which can remotely start and stop the camera with a USB cable. So I think it's nearly time that I show you some of the footage that I've captured with this gimbal, but there are just a few things I want to mention before we get into that. So I did try and set this gimbal up with my FX30 and my Sigma 16mm 1.4, and it was just slightly too heavy. It so very nearly worked, but I think if the camera and lens combination were just 100 grams lighter, it would have worked a lot better. When I was trying to do more complicated movements, the motors just didn't have the power to keep the stability. Now, secondly, it came with this foot, which as you can see is quite small. When I put the FX30 on here with the Sigma lens, it did have a tendency to kind of lean over with this tiny little foot. So that's just something I'd bear in mind. I've now got the foot from the Aircross 3 on it. And somehow that small foot seems to work absolutely fine on the bigger gimbal, but on the smaller gimbal, it felt a bit wobbly. So that's enough of me talking. Let me show you some of the footage that I've shot with this gimbal over the past couple of weeks.
takes us home.